and welcome everyone. I am Dan Schindler here with my colleague Paul Ray. We are Anders CPAs and advisors, and we are here for another edition of PPP with Paul and Dan. Things have changed quite a bit in the PPP loan forgiveness world since we recorded our last video. With that, we wanted to revisit the loan forgiveness process and related timing. As it stands today, most banks are open for business and accepting forgiveness applications. However, you're still in control. Some clients are choosing to wait as changes are still expected. Some clients are continuing to push forward. Whatever direction you head, we are here to assist. Paul, I'll turn it over to you here to go over a couple recent developments we wanted to make people aware of.
Thanks, Dan. In an effort to streamline the PPP loan forgiveness process and gather some supporting information on the loans that are in excess of $2 million, the SBA recently released two questionnaires. One's Form 3509, for-profit businesses, and Form 3510 for not-for-profit businesses. These are going to be administered by the SBA through the lender, and they're really just intended to support the borrower's good faith certification that surrounded economic need for the funding. If you remember early on, there were a lot of questions surrounding that. Now, the SBA hasn't officially released these, but some of our clients are starting to get these documents. So why do we think the SBA is starting this process? Well, if you remember, the Treasury made a promise to review all PPP loans over 2 million. And of under 2 million, they were going to let those, go by the wayside as far as the economic need. But, there are roughly around 25,000 PPP loans out there that meet this qualification. So we really think this is just a streamlined attempt to gather all of this information. And it's in the form of a questionnaire. And, your answers are going to most likely dictate, really, if a deeper dive is needed. This is a document that really shouldn't be feared. Once you receive it from your bank, then unless you have something to hide, you should be fine with this document. So who really needs to complete this questionnaire? Well, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, borrowers with loans over 2 million. The lenders have submitted their loan forgiveness application on behalf of these impacted borrowers, and they're probably going to receive a request from the SBA for completion of this form. And it's highly possible that the SBA is going to actually send this questionnaire out to all clients, regardless of whether the borrower has applied for forgiveness or not. I mean, that's part of their promise. So right now, we think that early on, it's being triggered by the forgiveness app. But if a client chooses not to ever apply for forgiveness and just use this as a low interest rate loan, well, they're still going to get one of these if they're 2 million or over. All of that's yet to be determined how that's going to work, but just be rest assured that it's coming your way. While the instructions indicate that the receipt of this questionnaire doesn't necessarily mean they're challenging your good faith certification, it's just that the borrowers are going to be required to submit this form within 10 business days. So once your bank gets with you, you need to move forward with it. Well, what does it really ask? Well, there's two specific areas that the questionnaire focuses on. One is really business activity assessment. And that really is documentation of gross revenue. They're going to make a comparison. What did you earn in the first quarter of 2020 versus 2019? And they're going to ask for supporting documentation. They're going to ask for an explanation of the effect of COVID-19 on your business. They're going to ask if you were temporarily shut down. Did you voluntarily shut down? Or were you required by a local municipality? Were you required by the federal government? Were your operations reduced? All of those things. They just want to know what really happened and how that affected you. Typically, there's not going to be a lot of documentation that's required in that area, but there's going to be plenty of questions. The most important part, I think, that people are looking at right now, the second part of this document is around assessing liquidity. So they're going to want documentation of your cash on hand. Shouldn't alarm anyone, but they're going to want to know how much you had from the beginning. They're also going to want to know about documentation of dividends and distributions, that if you made dividend or distributions to owners between March 13th and the end of your covered period, they want to know about that. They want to know about documentation on all prepayments that you made, if you made any prepayments during the covered period. They're also going to want documentation around highly paid owners and employees, which is information that you really already provided, but they're going to want to know about employees in excess of $250,000 during the covered period. They're going to want to know about the value of you as a borrower. If you're privately held, then they're going to want to get a document that shows, based on market capitalization, the value of your publicly traded business, uh, or information on ownership. If it's not publicly traded, they want to know really who owns the company. Is it private equity? Is it venture capital firms? Is it a hedge fund? Or are you affiliated with other companies? They just want to know that as well. And this is all in the form of a questionnaire. Really, the last part of it is information on other CARES Act benefits. Doesn't mean that you couldn't have those, but they want you to disclose what other benefits you may have gotten through the CARES Act. So I think what we can tell from this questionnaire is sort of how you answer these questions is very important. You want to answer them truthfully, but we can really sort of see a pattern. One or two questions, if you answer yes, just because you made more money in 2020 versus 2019, in and of itself doesn't mean that you're going to have your forgiveness questioned. Frankly, with all the stimulus that's been in the market, a lot of companies were really uncertain of what was going to happen, but they made more money this time around than they did. But that in and of itself is not going to disqualify you, but how you answer other questions. If you did pay a lot out, if you did a lot of capital improvements, so you start to build these questions, then that may really determine whether the SBA wants a little deeper dive. So answer the questions as they come through, answer them honestly, and really reach out to your advisors, because there is going to be some information that they're going to need. They're going to require additional documentation. So we just think you really need to get with your advisors as you're moving forward. And last but not least, a lot of you are saying, well, wait a minute, I'm under 2 million. I'm not going to get those. One of the caveats that's out there, the Treasury and the SBA said early on, is although they're asking for information on loans 2 million or more on all loans, they did reserve the right to go back and spot check other loans, and they didn't put a dollar amount on that. So I think this questionnaire is sort of a view of what could happen later on down the road. As we all know, the SBA has 6 years after your loan is forgiven to come back and question the forgivability of it. So reach out to your advisors, make sure that you're answering the questions as they're stated and truthfully, and you should be fine. Dan, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. All great information. And I think one thing to be clear here is this is not related to how you spent your loan proceeds to get the forgiveness. This is more on the front end. Did you deserve and were you eligible to receive a PPP loan as a whole in and of itself? This isn't necessarily trying to determine your forgiveness and your eligibility for forgiveness. It's to determine whether or not you were eligible to receive the loan as at first. Is that a fair assumption there, Paul?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, Dan.
Perfect. All great information. Certainly a lot of information, and something you want to get when you complete this questionnaire. You want to make sure you do it right. So, like Paul said, reach out to your advisors and make sure that you do answer things appropriately to avoid a potential deeper dive into your PPP loan and the related forgiveness application. We do have a blog out here on our Anders 19 COVID Resource Center that provides a little bit more information. But with that, we'll wrap up this episode of PPP with Paul and Dan, and see you next week. Thanks for joining. We'll sign off for now.